Betti. I am the CEO of the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. It is a pleasure to say welcome from you, from all of our 196 members at NEF. NEF is a trade association. We have been around for 20 years, if you don't know us, and we bring people together to look at the advancement of these great markets. And 20 years ago, the future was bright and the future was different. We have living now in the present, which is fantastic. It is mobile. And what we still think is we're still designing the future that is coming next. There's an entire great chapter to come with the new trends that we are seeing in this market. So it will be a pleasure to host this one, which is by now the third of our Future of Mobile sections, our Mobile World Congress. We have a lot of topics, a lot of great speakers. I should tell you, the theme for MWC is velocity. We'll stick to that. We'll be fast. We'll shower you with different ideas, but we also want to be showered by your comments online and here, so be interactive and do come back to us. And also, I'd like to say, it's great to be back at MWC. And it's great that MWC is back. This community thrives by talking, by understanding each other, by clashing. We hope to see some of the clashes, some of that understanding today. I'll give you just a glimpse of our sessions. We're going to have a little break in between, but do stay until the very end. We're going to start with our keynote speaker, Ann Lee from JP Morgan, talking about the data, personal data, and the value of personal data in the digital economy. We're looking at authentication of identity with Andrew Bell and David Birch. We will continue then looking at messaging and the super apps, the emergence of the super apps with Rakuten, Viber. And then cyber and defense, unfortunately, something very important for the present, for the future. And also looking at how a transit and a wholesale operation is now becoming a cyber security operation with LAN Telecom. And that's just the first half. We'll be having Bloomberg afterwards, to tell us about the perspective of the investment community, about the future of mobile itself. We'll also be talking about those future of the numbers, the little numbers, but still is your phone numbers, still working so much, but what about the future? Is it still going to be a phone number in your pocket? And we're talking about content and advertising and fraud. There'll be plenty. We'll be all with you. But as I say, velocity, I'm probably not following my own guidance. I'm going to run away immediately. And it's time to invite to the stage Ann Lee, the Head of Strategy, Partnership and Data for International Consumer at JP Morgan Chase. And she will also be welcomed later on by our own Michael Becker, the Director of Personal Data and Identity Initiatives at the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. So please, let's start now.
Thank you, Dario. I want to, first of all, thank MEF for inviting me here to speak. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. It is great to be back at the Mobile World Congress. And I want to, before I start, I want to give a shout out to a couple people in the audience. I want to thank Liz from Control Shift for helping us on the journey of identifying what the digital identity product should be for a financial services company. I also want to thank Sinead, who has done an enormous amount of work in preparing us, raising the awareness of digital identity within JP Morgan Chase, and also just doing an enormous amount of prep work for this session. So thank you. So I want to maybe jump to the key message first. We have 20 minutes together. I actually want to keep this monologue piece relatively short because I really look forward to the dialogue with Michael coming up. So what is the key message that I want to deliver? Just in case attention drifts during the session, I figure we might as well get that out of the way. For 30 years or so, the world has been powered by a digital economy. And this business model has worked enormously well for almost everyone in this ecosystem. For the organizations, the companies, the individuals as well, right? We have free searches that we cannot live without. We have social media, which gives us a brand new way of connecting with the world around us. We have personalization. But for some time now, we all sense that there is an undercurrent of dissatisfaction and discontent. We see it through regulations that are coming down, whether it is GDPR in the UK and the EU. We see it in the US through the CCPA. We see it through consumer behavior. 75% of us opt out of app tracking on iOS. And today, 40% of us actually bother to opt out of cookie tracking on websites, right? So why is there such a level of discontent with a business model that has created so much value for everybody in the ecosystem? I think part of the answer lies in the fact that value distribution in this current ecosystem is asymmetric. And we as consumers have realized that we've given up too much, perhaps for too little in return. And worse than that, we've also come to realize that we don't actually control how this story unfolds. And we're not happy with that. And that's why change is coming. So for all of us who are sitting here today, we collect data, we store data, we secure data, we share data, we use data. So if change is coming, then I think the call to action for this session is that we should actively participate and have a voice on how this change is going to come about. Because it does impact every single one of us. If we get this change right, it will also help us to unlock the next $1 trillion value creation in our economy. Many of you sitting here in the audience today are real experts on the topic of digital identity. You're experts, you're professors, you've been thoughtfully provoking this dialogue for many, many years. So frankly, it's a little bit intimidating standing up here to be speaking about digital identity with a room full of experts on this topic. I'm a newbie to this subject. I haven't been studying digital identity for decades. But what I want to share with you is a micro product journey within JP Morgan Chase to just share how we came upon the realization and the conviction that digital identity is important, core, and fundamental to what we do. Chase is the largest retail bank in the US. A few years ago, we made a very strategic decision that we want to bring the business and we want to stand up the brand outside of the US. So we stood up a new line of business called International Consumer. And it brings the international retail, it brings Chase banking to the international markets. UK is our first market. And I'll do a bit of a product plug here. For those of you who have residency in the UK, you should absolutely go download the Chase UK app. We're very proud of what we've delivered to the market, and we're very grateful for the tremendous market reception that we've received in the UK. So one of the key metrics of success for a digital bank is engagement. And how do we build engagement, and through engagement, build a trusting relationship with our customer without any kind of physical presence where we can actually see the customer, where the customer can come in to be served. So we did a lot of market research. We went out, we asked the customers, what does it take for you to engage with us more? How do we deliver this back to our customers? And what did our customers tell us? They told us that they want transparency over the data that we collect. They want to know, what is it that we're using the data for? They want us to give them the assurance that their data is secure and won't be compromised. They want the convenience of seeing what is it that we have collected on them. So it's a pretty long list of what we call desirability. And how do we turn this list of desirability into an actual product feature that we can deliver back to our customers? So in a world where all things being equal, simplicity is always the right answer, we did something really, really simple. When you open up a bank account, for those of you who've done it recently, you'll know that one of the critical steps is you have to give the bank a form of identification. It can be your passport, your driver's license, your national ID. It's part of opening up an account, and it is the bank's job by our regulatory obligation to check and verify and authenticate that piece of identification. All we did is give back the customer that piece of identification. That's all we did. You give the bank your identification as part of the opening account process. We give that piece of information right back to you. We give you back the image. We also give you back the data attributes from your identification. Your name, your birth date, your nationality, your address. But the way that we give it back is that it is now verified. We give it back to you in a form as a verified attribute. So now let's extend this idea. What we have just given back to the customer is the foundation of what a digital identity is. And we, as a financial institution, have gone back to perform our core functionality as a bank for hundreds of years, right? What does a bank do at the end of the day? A bank is a trusted custodian of things that are valuable to our customers. In the old days, we used to custody jewelry, gold bars, whatever it is that you put into your vault. Today, we're the trusted custodian of your data. You give the bank what is valuable to you. We give it back to you because it's yours to begin with. We keep it secure. We also transfer that information when we receive instruction from you, right? And we try to add value in that process. It's a little bit like you put money into the bank, and most of the time you expect a bit of return, right? Whether it's interest rate or it's a return on your investment, you expect to get your money back with a bit of value add on top of that, right? And that's what we try to do in this process of providing this digital identity. So this is how we embarked on our journey of being a digital identity provider. Before I sit down, I want to share a little bit of an exchange that Mike and I had last week when we were prepping for this session. We were both lamenting on the, I don't actually know where this phrase comes from, but we both know it, which is, if you're not paying for a product, then you are the product. And Mike actually extended this analogy to say, we're like a piece of steak on the table that's being served up. And we don't want to be that steak anymore. We want to change in role. We want to be the diner. We want to be the chef. We want agency back. We don't want to blow up the restaurant. The restaurant is fine, right? We just want a change in role. And in that change, we change the dynamic of how the industry is going to function going forward. And I think if we all proactively engage in how this change is going to happen, it is to all of our benefit, because data and personal data is either our business or it is deeply embedded in what we do. So with that, I'll sit down and hand it over to Mike.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. That was great. So we're just going to go right in and have as many questions as we can get through very quickly. So you told us about what you're doing. But one of the big overarching questions I have is, why are you doing it now? So, over the last couple of days, I've been talking to some people, and they said, oh yeah, we've been talking about giving people control of their data for 20 years, and frankly, they don't care, they don't want it, but then you're now investing a ton of time, energy, and effort to actually do this, so why now?
So, I'll split the question actually into two parts. First part is why, and then the second part is now, which is a timing question. I think why is, we're in the business, as I said earlier, right? We're in the business of building trust. And we want that relationship to start as early as possible. I think in a very businessy term, we call it, we want to move up the value chain. We want to start that relationship as early as possible. It used to be that relationship starts when you walk into a branch to open up or to receive your first financial product, right? Whether it's a savings account, a current account, a credit card, that's when the relationship starts. We want to now start that relationship, and we can start that relationship now before you walk into a branch, right? We want to know who you are. It's not the capital version of KYC of know your customer, but it's the smaller letter of we want to know who our customers are so that we can better serve them. So knowing your identity, knowing who you are, helps us to better provide financial products that are relevant to you. Now there is a second part to this question which I think is a bit more interesting, which is now, right? Is 2023 the year that it's all going to happen? Is 2024 the year it's all going to happen? I don't know. I don't know. As I said earlier, we have a strong conviction that change is coming. My crystal ball is as good and as bad as yours and everyone else's here. I don't think we can pinpoint exactly when this change is going to happen. But I do think if you look at our competition, you look at how the industry and the regulations are coming, it's pretty safe to say that things will change. And we want to be prepared, right? We don't want the change to come and then that be the first time we think about customer data, how to give consumer agency, and be unprepared and be caught off guard. So in a way, it could be this year, it could be next year, but we want to be very well prepared when change comes.
That's fantastic. And I think there's a definitional element that you raised that I think we need to untease a little bit. When most people look at the word identity, they look at it more as the process of identity management. Identification, verification, authentication, and then access management. What am I allowed to access? But you've extended that definition a little bit more to identity actually being a subset of valuable attribute assets and personal data to which should be in control of both you as well as the individual so they can go out and do something with that. So when you say you're going to, for instance, you give provenance to the data you give back, do you expect the people to be able to use that data somewhere for their own benefit? And what's the business model for helping people have value out of their data?
Yeah, so you caught on a very good point, and there's a weakness in this narrative that I just went through, right? And you're spot on catching that, which is we do think of digital identity simply as a set of data attributes that describes the customer. It can be direct identifiers that are issued by the government, such as your passport ID, but it is also just who you are. What is your preference? Where do you transact? What restaurants do you want to go to? Right? All of these things define who you are. Now, I described a case of giving that identification information back to the consumer, right? And you asked the question, then what is the customer going to do with it, right? What are they going to do with this digital identity? And I think this is why forums like this is important, because today, there is limited use for that digital identity, right? I often use this case of age verification, where I say, I go to a bar, and you get carded, right? In the US, we call it getting carded. In Europe, they just check your ID, but you have to be over a certain age to consume alcohol. You have at this point exposed your name, your address, your birthday, none of which actually the bartender needs to know. The bartender just needs to know that you're over 18, 21, whatever happens to be the age limit, right? Now, we as a financial institution, because we verify your birthday, can present a much more reliable age verification ID, whether it be a QR code or however we end up presenting it. But nobody's going to accept it. If I walk into a bar today and I show my fake driver's license, they'll probably accept it. I walk into a bar today, I show an authenticated age verification from a financial institution, the bartender's going to say, what is this, right? So there has to be a network of relying parties. There has to be adoption for this digital identity. And that's where the value comes from.
And that brings me to my last point in our last minute and a half. It takes a village, so you're not doing it alone. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to throw out your call to action. What's your call to action for building the ecosystem?
I think our call to action is for everybody to participate. You have to think about it, right? However micro or macro digital identity is within your organization, it should be top of mind. And we have our head of BizDev for business identity sitting here in the audience, Jennifer. We have Sinead, who leads our legal practice for privacy. All of these people are actively out in the industry and engaging government, industry associations, relying parties to try to pull together this ecosystem. But it is not something that JP Morgan Chase or any other financial institution can do do actually need entire participation of the network. And only then can we unlock the value of what we can do for the consumer.
Fantastic. So on that note, we have time for one question from the audience. Anybody have a question for him? Yeah, please.
That's fantastic, Anne. Thank you very much. When you give people back their verified attributes, is that in a standardized format as a W3C credential or an MDL credential, or is it in some proprietary JPM format?
So there are a couple layers to that. When we give the information back to the customer, the front end of what user sees is simply data attribute. Behind that, there is what we call verified by the bank, which is actually a regulatory obligation, right? And then there are, depending on the country that you're in, different regulations that, and different trust frameworks, frankly, that would say we have verified it to this particular scheme or trust framework or certification framework, and that is country dependent.
In the US, for example?
The US is actually much more behind than the UK or the EU when it comes to this topic. In the UK, right, where our international consumer business is, organizations like TISA, DCMS are the organizations that would be providing the scheme, right? And I think some of the networks, right, MasterCard, Visa, are also trying to come up with the trusted standard framework in terms of, you know, you're verified to what degree. Your verification is good for what use. And there are different standards out there that would govern that.
And again, a key part of that for you is interoperability. So you are looking to leverage like a WC3 standard and other standards that are relevant in different agents or regions so that we can have interoperability across these services.
Yes, because we believe that is going to be a key part of what drives adoption.
Exactly. All right, well, we're out of time. And Anne, thank you very much. That was fantastic.